on one exercise in Talisman Sabre, like we got drenched, and the Americans were like, just put your sleeping bags over the engines of the Amtraks. And we're like, okay. And then mine melted.
Yeah.
It went, and I had about 1 foot of sleeping bag for 10 days. It was just, it was, and I was in it. Like, I was still trying to get in it stupidly. I should have just went, this is dumb, right? And so a mate of mine just said, we can snuggle. And I just snuggled my best mate Nigel for two grunts,
Yeah.
spooning, right?
So you're in for, so you did 7 years. Now, I understand you were a chef as well.
When I got out.
Okay.
So I got out of the infantry and I was like, what's the next worst job? And I was pretty much, I worked in fine dining restaurants, um, on my feet, long hours. Uh, I mean, it was easy for me because everyone always said that chefs were just like, had a toxic work culture and like a foul mouth. And I was like,
Yeah.
qualified.
I,
Um, so I fit in well and had a great time doing that for a while until sort of got to the end of, well, I'd been chefing for about 8 years, and then I got to about 15 years of my adult life, and then I was like not really passionate about this anymore, and I was like, I don't know what to do with my like life. I was just completely lost.
Mm.
At that stage of my life, I was nearly 30, and I was this is about 2017, 18, and I was like took some time off work to sort of figure out what was next. And then I had this idea in my head. I was like, I'd always wanted to do something in performing. I guess like when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a rock star for about a year and a half.
Mm.
Played in a band called the Stains with a Z. We did one gig, which was at our school, and we kind of crushed it, which was great. And I just thought, well, someone will hand us a contract. Never did, obviously.
Talent scouts
Um,
not hanging out at high schools.
yeah, they weren't at Linwood Senior High School for that one battle of the bands, unfortunately. Um, and then look, I didn't think I was funny ever, but after I became a comedian, everyone in the military I knew just went, "Oh yeah, that makes heaps of sense." And I was like, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, yeah, we really wanted to be on sentry duty with you, like just kind of like keeping it light." And I used to do all the impressions of everyone.
Were you the bloke that they used to give the megaphone to at Brigade Rugby?
Yes, I did that job.
Yes.
I
Right.
did
Yep.
do that one job.
I,
You talk at the boozer. I at basic training, I would when no one was around, I would just like form people. We had this one sergeant who had this hilarious voice. Like his voice would break as he was doing drill. So I was like,
yeah. All over it.
"Yeah, all right, you cunts, get it on." Like, and I remember one day one of the corporals that was on duty was I was had people formed up in the hallway, and then out of nowhere, the duty, whatever whoever's on, whatever the person, the corporal that needs to hang around, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
was right behind me as I was like, fucking yeah. And I tell you what, best gig I ever did.
Yeah. Worth tap dancing on the admin line after.
I think it was the closest I came to nearly crying. Was that I didn't, but I wanted to.
It's
Mm.
so you can't describe adequately describe military culture, like particularly basic training to anyone, because all people think of is Full Metal Jacket. They don't realize just how absurd and how funny it can be.
It doesn't
Like,
have a civilian equal.
no,
There's
at
just
all.
nothing. Um, and for purpose and reason too, like it needs to do such the camaraderie forming element
Mm.
is now thousands of years in the making. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you go back to like Sparta and like there still would have been some guy who was like, "Oh," when no one was looking this, I reckon. But and it's just unique in that environment. And look, when I started making video content, I didn't think it was gonna work. because I was just kind of doing it for shits and giggles, and I didn't realize, I guess, the impact of the shared experience.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. And kind of discovered that, like, well, it's definitely in Australia, there's not much like it. There's nothing like it.
No, there is
I
not
just kind of
another job that does. Yeah.
stumbled across this market this gap in the market for the Venn diagram of military and comedian, you know?
Well, you seem to have come in at a fortunate time when the army has either stalled on their must take down every army meme page in existence that they've been trying to do for the last 10 years.
Yep.
Like, or that, because did you notice, like, when the Pineapple Express first came up, it was the most verbose, like, oh,
Yeah.
you follow it, but you don't dare hit like on it.
Yeah.
Now, guys are driving around on base with Pineapple Express stickers on the back of their cars. Like,
I think, it, I mean, I think the military would like it not to be,
yeah.
but I think it's now just it's too big. It's too big to fail, right? And I've was worried about that because unlike most of the other humor related meme pages, I've got a face,
Hmm.
I've got a name, and I've got an ABN, you know? So it was something I was worried about. And I recently did a gig in Canberra last year and I talked to these two ladies that were there and they were like, "Hey, we work in the Defence Force social media monitoring team." And I said, "Ah," and they said, "Yeah, yeah, it's their whole job to watch YouTube videos, to listen to podcasts and to watch and look at memes and to see
Oh,
what's
better say hi to them then. Hi.
G'day, they'll be reading this article." So, and I said, "Oh," and they said, "Yeah, we listened to you on a podcast, and then we started following you, and yeah, now we just really like it now." So I guess maybe I'm okay. I think more than most people, I need to be careful about singling out individuals.
Mm, mm.
I mean, I can get the ramifications if it goes wrong, whereas a meme page is a bit more, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
obscure.
it is so strange though. Once you get out, I feel like I have had this giant, malevolent, kind of angry, omnipotent force over my head watching me for the last 11 years. And I feel like and I'm still not used to it not being there. You
The
know,
crazy thing about the angry, like the just sort of being that exists in the back of your head is you kind of miss it.
a little bit. Yeah.
Everyone does, you know, and you don't actually miss that. Okay, so this is my theory: is that the byproduct of the angry thing is actually the people underneath that thing always looking out for each other.
Hmm.
You know the angry thing's always hanging around, so you're always just looking, and that's a level of camaraderie and a level of um, mateship that doesn't exist in the civilian world.
No.
So without it, it feels lonely. So then you say that you want people always go, "I miss the army," but what you really miss is the connection.
Mm. Yeah. And look, occasionally blowing stuff up was fun. Like
It's the best.
I do miss HE. Like
I haven't blown anything up in so long. One day,
one
my
day you'll feel.
career is what I'm. Yeah,
What year? So what year did you get out?
2012. Joined in
Get
2006.
out!
Yeah, I'm
Wow.
old. Yeah, I'm coming up on 40.
So this is strange to me because I'm 39. I think you and I are probably a comparable age,
38.
but there you go. I thought you were a lot younger. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use any filters, but I mean, this is what happens when you get out early. Like,
Yeah.
this is what humans look like.
The
So when
sun
you're in the
didn't.
military, when you see in the military, you see other people that have lived in the bush and had too much UV,
Yeah. And you got a warrant
unhealthy
officer
doses of
who's
stress.
50 and he looks about 80 because of the sun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just got out at 25 and just, you know, started meditating, you know.
Mate. So, mate, what was the biggest learning curve when you started doing stand up?
Bravery, I guess. I mean, when I first look, I do gigs now, and people come and they pay to watch, and they sit in the rows and they clap and they are there to see me. But when I started it, that wasn't the case. And I didn't get this immediately. Like I've been doing comedy for 8 years, and I think most people have heard of me in the last 12 to 18 months.
Hmm.
Like, and for the first 0 to 4 years was dire.
Yeah.
And like musicians get it the same thing. It's the pack up in the car. It's the drive to Albury Wodonga. It's the oh my God, there's a gig in Shepparton that you can get 15 minutes instead of the four you would get in Melbourne. And how much they pay you, like nothing. You're like done. Like it's just
Yeah.
that on repeat a lot over and over again. And I quite liked that, but it taught me. I mean, the last previous jobs I'd done as I said, I got to about 30 and I was lost in my life. So at this point, I was like, well, I got nothing to lose. Like, we'll drive around for free doing this wild activity. It just seems so exciting. But to get up to get up in front of a sold out crowd that wants to come see me is awesome.
Mm.
Harder to do the four people in the room than it is to do the big crowd, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because yeah, that's all it was at the start. So there's a lot of bravery in that. I've met a lot of big time war dogs who look at what I do and just say, mate, you wouldn't get me up there, you know? And
Mm.
I'm like, you've got a book about bravery. You know, you've got a Victoria Cross. And they're like, you wouldn't get me up there. You're like,
Yeah. I think I
I
know
like that.
exactly who you're talking about too.
I, I like that about I like that about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gave me pride to do something hard.
Were you a fan of, are you familiar with Rob Riggle at all?
Never heard of Rob Riggle.
Okay, Rob Riggle is an American comedian. He was in 21 Jump Street and a bunch of other movies, but he used to be a lieutenant colonel in the Marines.
Yeah,
Um,
wait.
Rob
What's
Riggle.
the with a W or an R?
No, ROB and then Riggle, Riggle, I think.
Yeah,
Rob
sorry.
Riggle.
Yeah, sorry, I do know. Yeah,
Yeah, you know.
I
Yeah.
did know that he was. Yeah,
Old
that
mate
guy.
used,
Yeah,
yep, old mate used to be a CO and actually
unreal.
was over in Iraq and yeah.
Adam Driver was in the Marine Corps. Um, there's a
I can
there's
picture
people
that.
around. Like, well, I think it's it's the best thing that I ever did for my comedy because during that time, the army gave me like a base level association with how life can suck.
Yeah.
Like when you do it, you dig in a trench for like 3 days doing def ops, and then it fills up with water.
Yeah.
Like that's you look back on that now and it's fun, but at the time it's not. It's just that
Yeah.
we were
I
once.
almost shot a tree because I was genuine. I was on sentry after about 4 days in, and I genuinely thought it was an African pirate pointing an AK-47 at me, and then
And
realized
you
it was a shadow in the tree. Literally instant pulling back the trigger, and it was
wicked.
about to crack off.
I on one exercise in Talisman Sabre, like we got drenched, and the Americans were like, just put your sleeping bags over the engines of the Amtraks. And we're like, okay. And then mine melted.
Yeah.
It went, and I had about 1 foot of sleeping bag for 10 days. And I was in it. Like, I was still trying to get in it stupidly. I should have just went, this is dumb, right? And so a mate of mine just said, we can snuggle. And I just snuggled my best mate, Nigel, for two grunts,
Yeah.
spooning. Right? Um, And then when I became a comedian, like other comedians were talking about, they're like, "Oh, I've got to go to this festival and it's so expensive because you need to get like accommodation and Airbnbs this much and all the rest of it." And I was like, I fucking grabbed my sleep. I was like, "Do I have a sleeping bag that's not burnt?" I slept in it. I went to the Adelaide. So when I lost all my money in COVID, right?
Yeah.
I just become a full-time entertainer. Had my deployment money in the bank. I was like, here's my nest egg. Let's go for this, right? Boom, Melbourne, COVID.
Yeah.
no job. My backup's hospitality. I'm just done, right? And I'm like, fuck, mate. Lost everything. And
Uh,
then like when COVID broke, I was like, no, 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 we're gonna go do the comedy thing. We're doing it. And I had sold my stuff and I had enough money to book like an Australian tour, but I didn't have enough money. So I had the money for the book the venues, like advertisement, and that was enough for the first 20 venues, and then I was hoping to make enough to pay off I was just lying, right? And but I didn't have any money for accommodation. I was like,
uh,
we can't do this. So the other option was I was in the army. Slept in a one-person tent in Adelaide for 2 weeks doing shows, and then those shows became just profitable enough to run the next ones. Slept in a car, like driving around places, and just like had the best time because I had that base level of it wasn't that puddle full of water.
yes. Yeah. Isn't it
I was like,
amazing?
life
Just having a structure over your head is considered a luxury. Like,
luxury. I would have known, guys. Like at one stage, I slept in my car, and I was like, I've been on exercises where you, if they said there's one spot in the car, you could punch on to see who gets it. You
yeah.
would.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my superpower in a way, is that it allowed me to just outwork everyone else because I could just didn't have that need. I didn't need any luxury.
Yeah. You,
You know what I mean?
you used to
Can of
being just fucked on.
yeah, it was amazing, and it was. I honestly look back on that time, and it made me as a comedian.
I love it, dude.
Yeah.
It, it
This is
is
in my
bizarre.
30s too now. Like I'm just like, like I'd been out of the army, I'd put that behind me, and I was like, but it still existed in my soul. I was like,
Uh,
we know how to suck.
but there's this weird misconception that cities seem to have that all people who join the army are inherently good people. And it's like some of the worst people I have ever met have been in the army.
I
Defenders,
made a video
Nazis.
about that. It was the highest viewed video I've ever made. Cross platform is about 10 million views. Was just that a video about your best mate is the worst person you've ever met.
Yeah,
You're like, I love him, I'd die for him, but he's not allowed near the kids.
right?
But also he's their godfather, you know?
Oh,
And that's one of the things about getting some form of success. I mean, I'm not out of the woods yet, and you never know when your creativity's finished, but is that I've lived that life, and now I'm like, oh, what can come out? What what can I get cancelled about? Like
yeah.
I've been in some dodgy photos, is all I'm saying.
Oh,
If I
100%. You're gonna come out and there'll be
when we were
yeah. Go for it.
when we were in Timor, I was with the New Zealand Army. I went on an exchange with them, and we grew beards, and then we had to shave our beards off, and we left like not all of the moustache, just the middle part of the
Yeah.
moustache for a day because that's fun. And
Yeah.
which I tell you what is quite fun. It's and then we're like, well, we'll get a photo, right? And we're like, of course. And then so there's just me, there's the photo is actually really hilarious because there's me, an Asian guy, a big Maori Kiwi dude, and a ranger, all with Hitler moustaches,
The master race.
doing we look like a Kanye West album, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just the worst. And out of
Oh,
context, it's terrible. 'Cause also, are we? Yeah, we're doing that. Like we're doing the full thing. And that photo just exists somewhere in the wilderness, like a hard copy,
yeah.
not a digital. And it's in some guy's garage in his box of military stuff. And one day he'll get over his anger and be like, "I'm going to go through my gear," and he'll be like, just as I get like the nod, they're like, "Hey, Goundrey, do you want to host the Logies?" They're like, "Yeah, yeah." He'll be like, "Not anymore." Like, and there's no way to explain it except for the fact that like, the boys, like
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
having a good time.
They'll never get it. Yeah.
You know?
They'll never
Yeah.
understand the
And I can't go on the news and be like, That's nothing. At 6 RAR, they used to drink out of their foreskins, you know? Doesn't make any sense.
It's it, that was the thing that blew my mind when I think it was when I first got to battalion is brothel culture. I had no idea. And
There's always that one dude at basic training who's already knows.
yeah,
Like,
and
oh, and I'm
like we're
like,
going to get on the beers, and he's like, "Oh no, I just went and smashed some prosy," and I'm like, did you did what?"
yeah. And that's kind of, I think, why everyone gets so close is there's very little things in society that will combine people from all walks of life, whether they're from the country, from the city, if they're rich, if they're poor, if they're the multiculturalism, Indigenous Australians,
Mm,
and people from all ideas and backgrounds coming together and having to form a group. Because in your friendship groups, you don't do that. You just hang around people you like and
mm.
have the same ideas as you and like the same things. That's how friendships are formed. But in the military, you'll just be like, my best mate's from the Central Australia and he fucks his sister. You know what I mean? And it's like, cool, what are you into? It's like, I went to a private school. You know, like
Yeah,
that's the and that you
I
those
was.
two people get along fine.
Oh God, I just wish someone had told me to learn how to play touch football before I got to battalion because I
Same, I
embarrassed
did
myself
nothing.
hard.
That's why I got on the megaphone.